Multilingual redditors, what is your they didn't realize I spoke their language story? Said something like you need to be careful when talking it about someone in your native language. There might always be someone who understands you in German while I was in Italy. A woman who was walking by responded like me, for example. Edit. Thank you so much for gold, kind stranger. My cousin is a big white guy who studied for 2 years in Japan during college. He worked for one of the head of Honda America for a few years. When the head guy learned that he spoke Japanese, he would make sure my cousin was in all the meetings and phone conferences with the Japanese branch. My cousin would listen to everything the Japanese would be saying to each other and report it to his boss during breaks. As such, the boss looked like a psychic to the Japanese because after break he would address their concerns without being prompted. The boss made mad bonuses every quarter and always funneled a bunch of that to my cousin. Edit. I have never seen click, so not from that. This is based off my memory of him telling me this about 15 years ago, so don't know how precisely accurate it is. Flemish guy here, working as safari guide in Kruger area, South Africa. One time, my boss asks me to go pick a family of 4 up at the Glacieri Reserve gate, do an afternoon game drive with them, and drop them off again afterwards. This was very uncommon. Normally we only do game drives with people that book a room in our own lodge on the reserve. So I pick them up, introduce myself and go over the rules, all in English. They reply in English, or at least, the dad does, and normally I can pick up straight away if it's someone from France, Belgium, Holland or Germany, but his English was Oxford English. So I thought, English people, off we went. 10 minutes into the game drive I hear them speak in Flemish, and not only that, in my own dialect. Side note, every Flemish town has a dialect. We can hear what region province other Flemish people are from, and if from the same region, we can often even pinpoint the exact little town or community they are from. Oh, I was going to have fun with these folks. Found a few nice animal sightings. Spoke English all the time, but then one sentence to the next, switched to their exact dialect. I thought, now they're going to be surprised, but nope. We all kept chatting in Flemish now. Only 20 minutes later, the daughter, maybe 10 years old, goes, wait a minute, he speaks Flemish. After all had a good laugh, I asked them where they were from. They literally lived 1 street away from me. It's a small world, folks. Edit. Oh wow. Gold, I am one of those redactors now. Thank you kindly, stranger. I was shopping with friends for clothes and these 2 ladies that worked at the store were outside of my fitting room speaking in Spanish. They kept criticizing me for taking so long to try on clothes and referred to me as dumb gringo and jokingly asked me if I needed any assistance, in English. They didn't realize I was Hispanic until I came out of the room and responded in Spanish that no, I didn't need their help. They got so red. Edit. Somehow it's not clear to people that I responded no, I don't need your help rather than just no. Most of these stories are a bit negative. Here's a lighter one. My mum's a linguist and speaks about 15 languages fluently, and as such, I picked up a couple along the way. Most of my childhood was spent in Germany, so I have a firm grasp of the language, which doesn't really seem to match my appearance. I'm a 6'3", 220 pounds, black man, who speaks German. Now this isn't too uncommon a sight in Germany, but in North America, I'm a ducking unicorn. So I was standing at the bus stop one day in the heart of downtown Toronto and there were these 2 60-something-year-old German ladies who were not having a good time. They were trying to find the art gallery and were fed up with the fact that they were having such a ratty time navigating because their English-speaking children had left them alone for the day. I didn't have anything particularly important planned for that day. So I turned to them and said something to the effect of, you know, our city has a lot to offer if you know where to look. Would you two like me to show you where the gallery is? And a couple places you can get lunch along the way. They nearly fainted. They were so happy that they found someone who spoke German and couldn't stop taking pictures with me to show their family the guy that saved their day. I walked them to the gallery and gave them a bit of an impromptu walking bus tour along the way. That was the day I gained 2 omas. Edit. Thank you so much for the gold, kind stranger. And remember, help those you can. : I lived in South Korea for 3 years. but I never learned too much of the language. A friend of mine is 100% Korean but is very tall and was educated in America and New Zealand, so she has an American accent. Her co-teachers at her school all assumed she couldn't speak Korean, so they would talk it about her constantly while she would listen on and feel terrible. She said nothing for a whole year until she had to speak at the end of year ceremony. The school offered her someone to translate but she refused, and in front of 800 or so students and faculty members she delivered her address in perfect Korean. She subtly called out the co-workers that had spent an entire year calling her a foreign pig. Apparently one started crying from the shame of it. I wish I had got to see that. I'm American, but can read and speak Russian on an intermediate level. A few years ago while visiting St. Petersburg, I was buying tickets for the Hydrofoil to Peterhof. All the signs at the ticket booth were in Russian, and I could read the ticket prices. The ticket agent assumed I didn't know Russian, and tried to tell me the ticket cost 3 times more than the stated price. I looked her right in the eye and said in Russian, "I see on the board here that the ticket I want is X rubles." Her jaw dropped, and the ticket agent sitting next to her started laughing her ass off. Not me, but my stepmother. She grew up in Japan and speaks fluent Japanese. She looks Italian and white. She has an olive skin tone, and since she is only a quarter Japanese, she doesn't look like she is from any East Asian speaking country. One day her and some friends went to get their nails, both hands and feet, done at a salon for some girl time. The ladies who were doing the work were speaking fluent Japanese and were mostly gossiping about men and other things until they got to the feet part of said procedure. My stepmother's friend is a little overweight, and she doesn't have runway model style of feet. Well, the ladies who work at the salon are just starting to make fun of her in Japanese, laughing and giggling, enjoying themselves in someone else's misfortune and looks. My stepmother said she let this go on for too long. It was about 5 minutes of them talking it before my stepmother replied in Japanese. Her comments to them, "I didn't realize that we needed to look like princesses to get service here." Something along those lines. The ladies stopped and looked at my stepmother with extreme guilt. They apologized in English and were silent the remainder of the time my stepmother and her friends were there. Me and my friend were sharing a cab with 2 girls we didn't know. Just decided to share a taxi with them because it was a long way and we wanted to save some money. They started speaking Swedish, not knowing my friend is also Finnish Swede. Her mother language is Swedish. She has been in Swedish school, but is Finn and speaks Finnish fluently. I understand Swedish but I was too drunk to care. Suddenly she texts me, "They are planning to leave us with the bill." I texted that we should tell the driver, so my friend just said, "These girls will pay half of this before they leave." He got the hint and didn't open the doors before they paid. Also another time I was in an airport with my aunt. She had broken her leg, so she was in a wheelchair. But because we were going to a beach holiday, we decided not to cancel it. Now my aunt has lived in Germany and speaks it fluently. I've lived there too, so I understand it well. But I'm not fluent. We speak Finnish. Something just to pass the time when flight attendant asks us to go on the plane first. This middle-aged man turns to her wife and says in German, "I don't think disabled people should be allowed on planes." My aunt, who is a true badass, asks me to stop. I was pushing her wheelchair, turns to the man and says in perfect German, "I'm sorry sir, but I broke my leg and didn't want to cancel my holiday plans. You are being incredibly offensive towards handicapped people and I feel sorry for your wife. Have a nice flight." He turned red, couldn't even say anything to us and just looked away. His wife looked mortified. I have more stories if someone is interested. My family and I went to Sri Lanka for 2 weeks to see where my mom grew up and general beach stuff. For some reason we were like the only people in the hotel we were staying at aside from a wedding party that left a day after we got there. A few days in there was another family staying there, I believe from Suriname, and we were all chilling at the pool and decided to play a game of water polo against each other. Things got exciting and one of the daughters yelled out something in Dutch like "Go for the big fat guy." My Dutch dad replied, "What big fat guy?" and everybody laughed. Just a simple story, but it was pretty sweet. When I was stationed in Korea, I was getting a haircut and the hairdresser had like an assistant or a new person helping her get me seated and prepared. She says to the main girl, he looks like a baby. I have a baby face and was like 22 at the time. I responded in Korean with, I look like a baby? She was really startled and embarrassed and noped out of there for the rest of the haircut. The main hairdresser took advantage of being able to talk with me in Korean, though, edit, added a letter. While I'm Spanish, I don't quite look like the stereotypical Spaniard, light skin color, blondish, green eyes. When I was living in London I got into several situations like that. The top one was on the tube back home. I think there was a football game, Chelsea, Barcelona, and this couple was going to the stadium and I was standing just beside them. Tube had a hard stop and I accidentally fell a bit over one of them. I apologized in English as I didn't realize they were Spaniards too. They started talking to each other saying this ducking fat cunt nearly smashed in the ground and things of the sort for almost 5 minutes. When they left the tube and he looked at me one last time laughing, I told him in perfect Spanish, enjoy the game, you little piece of it. His face going pale as the doors were closing was enough satisfaction for a week. Edit. Jesus, my most upvoted comment ever. It's about being an angry Spaniard. Who would have thought? I'm a Mexican who speaks Hebrew fluently. I was actually in the US in a deli around the time when the World Cup was going on in 2014. I was wearing a national team jersey and had been watching with family. We usually paint the colors of our flag on our cheeks. Tradition. The game was over and we were getting food, so my parents, brother and I walk into a booth. We sit and the people behind us, 3 middle-aged women, start speaking in Hebrew saying, look at these stupid Mexicans, which should have been a giveaway since the word for Mexicans in Hebrew is Mexicanim, being loud and thinking they own the place. Typical. Well, I turn around, look at them and answer in Hebrew, yes, we are very proud of our country and the great job they are doing at the World Cup. If it bothers you, you can move. The look on their faces was priceless. I've never felt so empowered until Mexico did a job and got eliminated from the cup. Edit. On our cheeks these stupid. Also I know no era penal, okay. When I started working at McDonald's at 16, none of the other employees realized I could speak a fair amount of Spanish. A few of my coworkers would talk crap about me in Spanish and I pretended for a few weeks that I didn't know what they were saying. Then one day a manager told me she was worth more than me because she was bilingual. So I told her, in Spanish, that I was actually trilingual. The looks on their faces when they realized I spoke Spanish all along was priceless. We had a large family reunion dinner at a restaurant and we were all sharing stories. My funny uncle was telling us how he used to pretend he was deaf and his sister would translate. To prove it, he asked the waitress to get the manager. When he came over, my uncle started signing to him, with made up and exaggerated gestures. My aunt told him that the food was good and the server was excellent. All the while the manager just smiled and nodded. When they were done talking, the manager said in sign language. He spoke ASL and knew it was bullet. We blew up laughing and my uncle's face turned beet red. I used to work at gun store. 2 guys come in, speaking Spanish to one another, with one guy translating for the other. I'm a 6 feet 5 inches goofy looking Irish dude. So they had no way of knowing I lived in Mexico for 2 years as a teen. So the whole time I hear the guy describing the gun he wants, how much he likes it, etc to the translator. Translator tells me everything like he is the one who wants to buy the gun. He says he brought the other guy because he knows guns. Finally I hear the Spanish only guy say that this is the one he wants. Translator then tells me he has decided which gun he wants. I let them know, in Spanish, that I wouldn't be selling them any guns. What they were trying is called a straw purchase and is very illegal. Me and my sister are Hungarian but grew up in England and speak fluent Hungarian and English with natural accents. We'd also spend most of our summers growing up in Hungary where since we speak English perfectly people assumed in public we were from England and would occasionally say something mean or negative not expecting us to understand. There's few things more satisfying than replying in perfect Hungarian what did you say and watching people's eyes widen in panic and profusely apologize. I'm Swiss and Peruvian and live in Peru, so I don't look at all like a Swiss guy. There were 2 Swiss girls sitting behind me on a bus talking about Latino guys. Then one of them asked the other if she found me attractive. I turned around and said that I would love to know that too. The look of confusion and shame was priceless. Then we just all laughed. Now I've got 2 new friends. Edit. They were speaking Swiss German. Schweizerdeutsch. Edit 2. They both later confessed that they found me attractive. I'm Brazilian and was flying to Rio from Atlanta. There were these 2 very attractive girls with their mother speaking English very fluently, and one of them had their seat right next to mine. We exchanged some courtesy in English as I just assumed they were American, and so did they. They were Brazilian Americans and so did not have an accent, and I started speaking English from a young age, so as long as I don't talk too much I can go unnoticed. So they start putting their carry-on luggage in the bin overhead, and the mother says to her daughters, in Portuguese, Coitado, tia chando que vou de uma de vocês senta do lado dele, which means, poor thing. He thinks I'll let one of you sit next to him. So I just turn to her and say, in Portuguese, don't worry, mum, I'm just being polite. I do have a girlfriend and it'll be a pleasure to share this flight with you. She just went, oh, and then she sat there in silence for the whole flight.